All right. Hello, Marjorie, and welcome everyone. We're super excited to have you all joining us today. My name is Ciso Natuli from Sercante, and I'll be monitoring today's session. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover. Yes, of course, these sessions are going to be recorded and will be available on demand directly after the event. We'll also be following up with them via email as well. During the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to post in the Q&A tab above. I'll be monitoring that and answering as we go along. And we may even have time for Q&A at the end. Lastly, use the chat. We're here. There's emojis, gifts, and so much more. We want to hear from you about the content you're receiving. All right. So now let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce you all to our amazing speaker, Heather Rinke, who has an awesome session today ready for us about the 5 tips to get started with Agentforce. So, Heather, handing it off to you.
Thanks, CISO. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm Heather Rinke, Salesforce Product Director at Sercante, and I'm really excited to be talking to you a little bit about Agentforce. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our awesome, amazing sponsors, without which this session would not be available or would not be here. And I would encourage you to check out these sponsors throughout the conference. You'll see like a banner at the top of the event, which allows you to go and check them out. So I really encourage you to do that. So we're going to take a brief step back in time a little bit to talk about AI and how it's changed over the last few years. So first, when we saw Salesforce talk a lot about AI functionality, they did it mostly talking around predictive AI. And that allowed for us to have data-driven recommendations and insights that helped us focus and prioritize on what to do. So things like scoring, predictions, and bots. Then a couple of years ago, we saw ChatGPT take off and the influx of generative AI capabilities. These were AI assistant features that helped people to flow work to take on individual tasks when needed. And now we're starting with autonomous AI, and this is where agents act as digital workers doing tasks without human intervention. And at Dreamforce this year, that was the big theme, autonomous AI and the introduction of Agentforce. So just to level set a little bit, I'm going to talk a couple minutes about what Agentforce is before we start getting into the tips. What Agentforce is it enables autonomous AI agents to help your business get more work done. So whether it's launched from a customer-facing channel or being in the CRM, helping employees in the flow of work, the idea is they increase productivity, reduce team workload by automating routine tasks and assisting with complex ones. There's out-of-the-box agents, or you can create your own. You can connect agents to enterprise data, making those interactions relevant and accurate. And you can utilize some of the automated processes that you probably already have in your organization, like Flow, Apex, APIs, or prompts. And Agentforce is integrated in the Salesforce platform, which is which makes it so effective. And this view really encompasses how it layers across all the clouds. Those out-of-the-box agents, I'll mention those coming up, and custom agents you build, they work across those clouds to carry out relevant tasks, utilize data they have access to across the CRM and even in Data Cloud. And Data Cloud also supports that trust layer, so fueling the reasoning and the feedback loop that helps Agentforce continue to be relevant and continue to learn. And all of that is grounded and is based on the Salesforce platform. So taking a closer look at what's included in Agentforce, you can sort of look at it in two ways. One, you have out-of-the-box agents, and so these could be autonomous, so agents that work independently and hand off to a human when needed. So we saw this GA, the first agent to be available was the service agent that can help with case deflection or order management. And there are many more that are targeted for the roadmap coming out, like SDR or personal shopper. And then you have ones that kind of assist and augment. So helping employees by helping them take on tasks and perform tasks more efficiently and quickly. And there are several that are on the roadmap, like sales coach or campaign generation, that are coming in the near future. And then you have a set of tools that can help you build your own. So within Agent Builder, you can create, test, and deploy custom agents using building blocks called topics, which allow you to sort of categorize your actions based on a particular job that needs to get done. So something like deal management can maybe contain some actions that help a sales rep with their day-to-day tasks, like maybe finding relevant opportunities or creating to-do items. Your data obviously is a big factor of this, and then the actions themselves. So using prompts, flows, Apex, you can pull all this together so that you have those set of actions that an agent can use in order to complete tasks. And there are standard actions, as I've mentioned, and you can create custom, and you can combine these. So you can also customize standard actions as well. So let's look at how this all works together. When a user or a customer makes a request to an agent, might be on an external website or in the CRM, that agent matches that request to a topic that in order to find the most relevant job that's being requested. So the best topic then is selected based on the instructions within that topic. Those are typically made of natural language that helps guide that agent on how it uses which actions to run, which actions to take, or what clarifying questions to ask. This is also where you can define guardrails on what the agent should not do, or when it should involve a human. And then once the best topic is selected, the agent will then look at the available actions and the instructions available to help determine what's the action it should take. This could be, again, standard or a custom action. And the action includes its own instructions, both on guiding what it should and shouldn't do, and also the inputs and outputs, maybe required information that it needs to execute, or what may be needed in order to respond. All of that is done and then pulled together in order for that agent to generate a response. So I mentioned standard topics. There are a lot. Actually, looking through, even just over the last few weeks, I feel like there are more and more that keep getting added. So there are a number that are sort of standard across the clouds, and then there are some that are going to be that are going to come with different clouds, whether it be Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, or Commerce. So I'll mention a few. So content creation. You can use it to help users draft or revise text. So things like, helping me draft a new subject line. You can help with generating campaign briefs, helping sales reps to get recommendations on the best approach to close deals based on past data, or using something like general CRM, which allows users to maybe a query for all of the cases related to an account, or to summarize an account based on the data that's in the system. So there's a lot of capabilities, even in topics, which are comprised of a set of number of actions. But then you also have standard actions that you can use. So things like creating a close plan. So helping an agent define, or helping a sales rep define, what are the things they need to do in order to close a deal. Or maybe they want to get an activity timeline of maybe all the things that they have on the go today, or the last activities related to a prospect. There are a lot of capabilities available, and there are a number here that are included with the other clouds that add to this list. I'll also mention another major component of Agentforce, which is the reasoning engine. And this is the brains of the agent, helps it reason, learn, and take action. So when somebody adds a request, whether it's a user or a customer, it'll take that request and match it with a topic based on the instructions. It finds and launches the right actions that are relevant in order to respond. And then it continues and it learns based on the outcomes of the interactions in order to determine what to do next. So when you hear me say the agent does this and it looks at this, it's really Atlas that's doing all of this, the brains. So what can it do? Here's a number of different things that it can do. I'm not going to touch on every single one, but some highlights: augmenting and automating, which I've already mentioned, helping humans do their job faster and more efficiently, reducing manual workarounds, just helping them get things done faster, or things that are repetitive. Be able to personalize. So using the data in the CRM, helping to craft messages that is relevant to the customer or to an individual in order to get that right message across. Being able to summarize. So I mentioned account summaries, but even just like conversation summaries, knowledge article summarization, there's a lot of capability there. And then also, I'll also mention search and learn. So this is something that I've learned about recently about just the ability to search for structured and unstructured data, or search within structured and unstructured data, can open up a lot of capabilities. Like imagine searching PDFs or contracts for mention of specific terms or clauses. There's a lot of things you can do. What it can't do, though, there are some things it can't do. It's not going to do all the things. So it's not going to fix all of your data problems. There are tools that can help. This can even provide some assistance with some data tasks, but it's not going to do all. It's not going to do all of the fixing and all of the cleanup without requiring work or human intervention. And it's not going to automate all the things. There's still going to need to be humans involved. They are the most powerful piece of training for AI, and will always have a role in that process. And then it's not going to passively solve business problems. It knows what you teach, and it must be trained. So it's constantly going to rely on that training, and because scenarios are always changing. And it's not going to maintain itself. You don't set it and forget it. They will require maintenance. Again, scenarios change, processes change, data changes. So agents must be maintained in order to adapt. So quick check on just what's available today. So if you have Einstein 1 edition, or Einstein licenses like Einstein for sales, for service, for marketing, you will have access to this. As of October, the service agent was the first out-of-the-box agent to be available. There are more agents on the roadmap to help sales, service, and marketing commerce. But then also the builder and the tools, which helps you, to build your own, to use some of those standard topics and actions. And then the testing ability that you see just in this screenshot of the builder helps you to test scenarios in order to make sure that it's doing what you need it to. This is also available if you've enabled foundations in your org. This should always also be available to you there as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about Agentforce, just in general, just to level set. So now here's a few tips for getting started. So first, think about your use cases. I mean, I mentioned a number of them, potential general use cases, but now you need to think about where it could work in your organization. So a few things to ask, first of all, how are you using your CRM today? What are processes is your org currently supporting? Where are you seeing some pain points in your processes? Are there areas that you could be automating tasks so your team can function on more valuable things or focus on more valuable things? Are you seeing friction points or hearing frustrations about employee or customer experience? Or are there things that you wanted to introduce in terms of processes or tasks, but haven't been able to because of team capacity or capability? So those are hopefully will help tease out some areas to tap into. Then for each use case, you want to think about what will be needed to transition to an agent. What do they need to be doing? What is the job they'll be doing? What are the actions they need to take? And also importantly, what should they not take? So this is important to define so that it keeps the agent in their lane and operating within the use case that you want it to. You want to then prioritize those use cases based on, what are, after looking at all the things involved, what is the lowest effort of risk, and that's going to bring the highest value. You can break that down even. So if it's something that maybe will take a little bit of time and effort, but maybe there's something, a sub process or subtask within there that where an agent could support that you could tap into earlier. So a few use cases here. So I'll just touch on these, a couple of these, maybe giving sales reps deal insights and guidance, or assisting them with lead nurturing tasks. On service, maybe automatically answering common questions with some knowledge or FAQ management, or automate returns processing. And then marketing, right? Helping to generate email content or generate campaign briefs. These are just a few examples, but I'm sure there are others that you can probably think about in your org. Then once you've defined your use cases, you want to think about, how are you going to measure success? So things like, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve? Maybe reduce cases that a service team can handle. What's that level of success mean? Maybe reducing agent handling time. In terms of like KPIs, what are the KPIs that we need to track that goal, and can we measure that now? So things like average handling time or first response time. Do we have that data in place to measure? And you also want to make sure that you can measure so you can get a baseline so that you can do a before and after to compare and measure success. So a few examples on things that you can, based on your use case. Maybe you're checking lead response time or deal velocity, or maybe for marketing, you're tracking campaign ROI or lead conversion. These are just a handful, but some things to get you thinking. Next, you want to assess your data. Your AI is only as good as your data. So for the use cases that you're thinking about, asking what data is needed. If you're focusing on case deflection, where would you have knowledge base? Do you have a knowledge base that already in place that can help? What customer data do you need to make sure knowledge is relevant? Where is it located? Is it somewhere that an agent could access it? And is it reliable? Or do you have lots of duplicates in there, or do you have that single view of the customer? Is your data clean and accurate? Is it even updated regularly? Are job titles and company information up to date, for example? And I've just added a little placeholder here. There is a workshop coming up on Thursday that tackles this topic in a lot more detail on data management and thinking about how you want to craft your data in order to prepare for AI. So I encourage you to check that out. And then you also want to assess your metadata. I mean, data is really important, but for agents, metadata is also important. The descriptions that you're putting in your flows and in your variables, your resources that you're using, those are directly used to populate when you're building agent actions. So you want those descriptions to be clear and concise. You want them to describe what action is going to be taken, and using naming conventions of your resources will also make it easier to determine what the inputs and outputs need to be. Okay, so tip number 4, start small. So this is probably a no-brainer, maybe, but I wanted to just call it out. You want to pick one thing to pilot. It really is the idea that you want to focus on what can give the most impact in that shortest amount of time. It's really easy to get caught up in all these things that can be solved with agents, but you may want to avoid, or I would encourage you to avoid, starting with complex processes first it would take more effort to get off the ground, and then it could potentially, the more complexity, the more it's prone to issues or disruption. So you want to really think about those quick wins that can move the needle that you can expand on over time. So consider the use cases, the success metrics, the data needed. Think about those out of the box agents, the topics or actions that are available, or your existing automations you can utilize to create your own. And maybe even think about, if you were to roll this out, like, is there a way to be able to do this in a small scale within a single team or within a single region? So something to think about there. It really, by starting small, you're more likely to be able to measure success. And this is also better for building excitement, building trust and confidence, creating momentum, and getting buy-in across the organization. Tip number 5. So let's say you've picked your use case and you're ready to design and build. This is more tactical, but important. You want to make sure your instructions are clear and solid. So when an agent is triggered, your user or when your user enters a question or a request, the agent is using that and comparing that with the instructions of the topics to determine the most relevant topic to respond. Those topics are defined of different, I'm using the term instructions, but really there's sort of 3 areas. One is the classification. This helps an agent determine when to use a topic in the conversation based on the user's intent. The scope, which tells an agent what it's able to do within a topic, and the instructions, helping an agent decide how to use those actions for different use cases. And as you can see in the screenshot, like, you can add multiple instructions, which is can be a good idea in order to make sure that you've got a clear view of what the agent can and can't do. Then you also think about your actions. So once that agent selects a topic, the available actions, it will check those next and take a look at the instructions within those actions to determine what is the most relevant action to take. And this is done through the action instructions that help determine what your action does and when to use it. And then those input and output instructions, which helps to define what information may be required. So what information that agent needs to make sure it has, maybe get from the customer before acting, and then what the result of the action is or what the response should be. So instructions are really foundational for grounding agents. They set the guardrails for how the agent should behave, and set that context for what they need to do their job. A few best practices for writing topic instructions or action instructions would be: start simple, start with maybe the main use case, test it, then iterate and test again, making sure the instructions are or the agents are behaving the way you want them to, and there isn't any conflict between your instructions. You want to use plain language, so natural language to describe what your action does. Maybe keep it between 1 and 3 sentences. Include the goal of the action and use cases, any objects or records. And in general, just be more relevant in the detail. The more you vary the language, also something to keep in mind, the stronger your agent can become. So if you have an action that's going to do some querying of records, maybe using get, find, retrieve, identify, multiple different versions in order to make sure that it's learning and it's stronger. You want to avoid industry company jargon. So, pretend that you're writing this for somebody that doesn't know your business. So if you're writing something where the action is to act on a qualified lead, that qualified lead definition is going to depend on your company. Many companies have different versions of what qualified lead means. So instead, maybe you want to focus on the data or what the actual data says. So lead status is MQL, for example. And you want to give the agent examples to help them understand. And it's also not going to know your business process. So if a specific sequence has to happen, call that out, describe it. Call out any conditions that need to happen before an action is taken. Then you want to think of all the paths. You want to go through all the possible permutations to make sure that you've got all your bases covered. So if you think about like a customer reaching out because they didn't receive their order, well, you have different order statuses: order shipped, order delayed, etc. So if the status is shipped, then then is it in transit or is it delivered? If it's delivered, well, the customer said they didn't get it. So do we have the right address, or is it stolen? So you can see how, based on one specific utterance from the customer or a request, there could be a number of different paths. You want to also remember the guardrails. What are the things the agent can't do? What are the things that you want to make sure that you prevent any unwanted responses? And you want a good, clear direction on when the agent should route to a human. And then lastly, if you didn't call out the caps there, you want to make sure you test. That's really important. Agent Builder gives you the ability to do that, to do testing before you activate anything. So you really want to make sure you test all possible scenarios to make sure it's behaving the way you expect it. And that is 5 tips for getting started. You want to identify use cases. You want to define your success metrics. You want to assess your data and your metadata. You want to start small, start with those quick wins, and then you want to make sure your instructions and your descriptions and your all of your details of your actions and your topics are sound. So obviously, I mean, that's just a highlight, but you want to get your hands on it if you have not already. I got to say, Salesforce has been really good about making this accessible to people to learn about it. So if you have not already, there is a trail to help you get started on it. And there are virtual events to help you workshop and build your first agent with Salesforce. There's world tours that will have some of this capability to get hands-on, as well as content on Salesforce Plus. And then there's also a lot of AI-related sessions to check out at Mar Dreaming. So today has a lot in store. And day 2, I'll call out that you also have the ability to build your first agent at this conference. So that's pretty exciting too. And with that, I will say thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Heather. That was an amazing session. I know there was stuff I learned. I hope the attendees have learned stuff too. We do have about 3 minutes, so it looks like we do have some time for Q&A. If you continue to have questions, please post them. We have about 2 minutes left in our session, so please feel free to post them. There were a couple of sessions, Heather. I provided some answers, but if you want to provide some insights, please feel free. So one question that I have from, let's see, Audrey. Audrey asked, where is it? Do we need to have Data Cloud in order to leverage Agentforce effectively, or can you just have CRM and Marketing Cloud?
So that's going to depend a little bit on your use case. I mean, the typical question, it depends, right? So from what we're hearing from Salesforce, that you don't necessarily need to have Data Cloud implemented to use Agentforce. I'm just going to say that as a bare bones. You do need it enabled because Trust Layer needs it in order to be able to capture feedback. That being said, if your use case requires a lot of access to unified data, harmonized data, maybe a true view of the customer based on lots of different sources and information, it's really recommended. But again, that depends on your use case as well. So I would encourage you to give it consideration. It certainly does help make your agents more powerful.
Yep. And I think that was along the lines of what I said too. And my apologies. It's Audra with the A. My apologies about that. We do have another quick question. Is there a way to test Agentforce before deploying into production?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I touched on that a little bit. I had one little screenshot, which probably wasn't very good, so Agent Builder gives you that capability. So when you're building the agent, you have the ability to add your topics, add your actions, but then there's a whole builder or a whole testing area where you can actually enter information or enter requests or queries as if you were that customer or that user, and then you can see how the agent is actually looking at the topic, looking at the directions, and executing the actions. So then you can see if it's doing what you expect, and it will iterate. It will give you a response, so you can continue to utilize that to test before you even activate.
Okay, and that concludes our session. So thank you so much, Heather. Thank you everyone for joining us. Special shout out to our sponsors for their support. Without them, our dreaming wouldn't be possible. So take care, everyone. Enjoy the sessions that we have throughout the rest of the day.
Thanks, Cecil. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.